For coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page, if you could do me a quick favor, see that little black subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that black subscribe button. Really does help our audience grow, really does help our channel grow, really does help and mean more than you could possibly know. So go ahead, hit that little black subscribe button. Also, thank you to our presenting sponsor, Betfred Sportsbook and the Betfred Sportsbook app. Bet 50 on any game, get $250 in free bets. Thank you again to Betfred. Thank you again to you. Now, here's the video that you came here for from the last couple days in college hoops, and it's wild, right? It is now June 28th, 2023, and we are still talking transfer portal news. But on Sunday, after I had finished recording Monday's show, late night, it was probably about 8:30, 9 o'clock Eastern time. Did you see that Jahvon Quinerly, a very key part of two SEC championship teams in Alabama, and really just a well-known player dating back to his recruitment back in 2018, announced that he was going to transfer and leave Alabama? And for people who are kind of like confused, like Torres, you went back in May, you said there was the deadline to enter the portal. How are players still entering the portal? Well, if you remember, and we talked about this with Antonio Reeves, May 11th was the date in which any undergraduate player who wanted to transfer had to announce that they were leaving their school. And so that was why March and April were so busy, is because you had to get your name in the portal before May. That's why Hunter Dickinson transferred when he transferred. It's why Arthur Kaluma put his name in the portal before he transferred. So you go on and on down the list. Virtually everybody had their name in May. But I bring it up because there was a little caveat to that rule. And that was that graduate transfers did not have to be in the portal by May 11th. They could enter at any point. And when I mean any point, I literally mean any point. And it was funny because last week I was actually talking to somebody in college hoops. And I said to him, okay, so I know that May 11th was the undergrad deadline. And I know that there's no deadline for graduates, but there has to be like a deadline, right? Like maybe it's August 1 or July 1 or whatever, but there has to be a deadline. And this coach who's still recruiting the portal, he said, no. He's like, there's actually no deadline. My understanding is as long as the player commits to a school and enrolls before the fall semester starts, he is eligible to play in the fall if he is a graduate transfer. And so in theory, you can see more players, as long as they're graduates, entering the portal this time of year. That's why the Antonio Reeves situation was so fascinating. He was clearly trying to fast track a couple classes so that he could graduate in time to enroll somewhere else. And I don't think Jahvon Quinerly is the last player to do this. It is a concern right now in college basketball. And I'm not here to litigate should grads have different rules and da-da-da-da. I think this rule will eventually be amended. I'll be blunt. I do think it is a little bit ridiculous. I am all for player rights and player movement and all that good stuff. But like at some point, it's July. Like at some point, if it's not before July 1, if it's not before June 1, whatever it is, just go back to the school you were at. And if you don't want to be there, go pro. If you're a graduate, you've already gotten your degree. You've already done what you're intended to do. So I bring it up because in theory, there are more players that could still enter. And I'll tell you, there is concern among some coaches that some of their players could be tampered with. And so I bring it back full circle because Jahvon Quinerly was the latest graduate transfer to actually enter the portal here over the last couple days. Alabama guard, really like a very good college basketball player. And I bring this up all the time because obviously, look, if Jahvon Quinerly was 6'4" and could do the things he did, he probably would have been in the NBA 3 years ago. But he's 5'10", 5'11", but he's a former McDonald's All-American. How about that? Was in the same McDonald's All-American class as Zion Williamson and RJ Barrett. Went to Villanova for a year, was part of the investigation, had initially committed to Arizona, ends up at Nova, and then over the last 4 years spent time at Bama. And to me, it's a little bit sad that he decided to leave Alabama because at the end of the day, I think he would have gone down as a program icon. Was part of, as I said, 2 SEC regular season championships, 2 SEC tournament championships. Was a key cog on some of the best teams in Alabama history, 2 Alabama teams that have made a Sweet 16, but he decides to leave, and now somebody is going to get a really good guard late. Remember, last year he was coming off major knee surgery, but by the end of the season, he was a really good player. SEC tournament, NCAA tournament, he is inserted into the starting lineup. the final 9 games of his career at Alabama, averaged 14 points and 4 assists per game. Somebody's going to get a really good point guard. The early returns are that Memphis could be the favorite here. So keep an eye out for that, because if Memphis gets this guy, Memphis becomes a very intriguing team. That is who right now is favored to get Jahvon Quinerly. By the way, I shouldn't say it's all bad news for Alabama. Grant Nelson is officially going to transfer per Jeff Goodman. There was the weird report that he had verbally committed, but he never really announced it about 2 weeks ago. Grant Nelson appears headed to Bama. So I just mentioned that Jahvon Quinerly could end up at Memphis, that they are perceived to be the favorite. Well, how about this? Penny Hardaway still doing work in the portal, because outside of Quinerly, on Tuesday night, they did get actually a very big commitment from a player that many people probably know the name, but maybe don't totally remember the backstory. And that's Jordan Brown, a transfer from Louisiana Lafayette. And if the name sounds familiar, but you can't really put, the pieces together in your head, here's what you need to know about Jordan Brown. This was a guy like Jahvon Quinerly. I think they are the last 2 players in college basketball from the 2018, McDonald's All-American game with RJ Barrett and Zion Williamson and Cam Reddish. He is also about to be 25 years old, like Jahvon Quinerly. Began his career, how about this? Playing for Eric Musselman at Nevada, then transfers to Arizona, plays 2 years. Sean Miller leaves. He ends up at Louisiana Lafayette. And this past year had an excellent season at Louisiana Lafayette, averaging 19 points, 8.5 rebounds per game. Well, he ends up at Memphis. And I'll tell you this, Memphis, especially if they can get Jahvon Quinerly, has a very interesting team. They have Caleb Mills, a transfer from Houston who was very good the last couple years at Florida State. Again, began his career at Houston, played at Florida State, was very good, ends up at Memphis. They added a couple other transfers, a D3 All-American named Jonathan Pierre, a kid from Middle Tennessee State. And they have some interesting freshmen coming in too. Keep in mind, by the way, Mikey Williams, we talked about him in the spring. Former 5-star arrested on felony gun charges a few months ago. Technically, nothing has really happened with that case, and I think Memphis publicly has not distanced itself from Mikey Williams, so in theory, he could be there as well. But Memphis, very intriguing team, and if they get Quinerly to go with Brown, that's about as good of an inside-outside combination as you could possibly have. Jahvon Quinerly we'll find out about, but Jordan Brown officially committed to Memphis on Tuesday night.